Data science is dead. There are no data science jobs left. Maybe you should go get a law degree instead. You know that AI is going to replace you in like 3 years, right? I don't know about you, but I've heard these statements so many times. I've read dozens of articles predicting the death of data science and talking about how it's all over for us, and I'm here to tell you that that's simply not true. Listen, this year alone, I received 3 different job offers from 3 different multinational companies. All of these roles had over 100 applicants on LinkedIn. So yes, this is a competitive space. But if you play your cards right, if you tailor your resume, do all of the interview prep, and build up your portfolio, I can guarantee you that you're gonna outdo the competition and get a great job that pays well. That's exactly what I'm gonna show you how to do in this video. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you, data science interviews are hard. Often they're harder than the job itself. And that's because companies are trying to filter through hundreds or even thousands of applicants to get the best possible person to do the job. Now, most data science interviews have 3 rounds, and this is at large, reputable companies. They're usually 3 rounds. The first round is a technical interview. This is where you will be tested on your Python, SQL, machine learning, and statistics skills. The second round is typically a take-home assessment. So you'll be given a case study and you'll be expected to solve that case study using data. The third round is a behavioral interview or a culture fit interview. Of course, this will differ based on where you're located and the type of company that you're applying to, but for the most part, at reputable large companies, you will find these 3 interview stages for data science roles. And in this video, I am going to show you the techniques that I used to ace these 3 stages of the data science interview. Here's a timeline of everything you will learn in this video. First, we will talk about how you can ace the technical portion of the data science interview. This will be broken down into 4 areas: Python, SQL, machine learning, and statistics. I will give you sample questions that I have been asked in each of these areas, along with examples and tips as to how you can answer these questions and how to prepare for them. I will also give you a free checklist describing all of the concepts that you should learn in each of these areas. And then I will talk about the second interview round, which is the take-home assessment. I'll explain the different case study type questions that I have been given during this interview round, and I'll also talk about how I aced this interview round by simply doing a ton of data science projects. Finally, we will talk about the third interview round, which is the behavioral or the culture fit interview. I'll give you tips on how you can impress the hiring managers and secure that data science job. I've broken all of this down into a timeline on the screen, so feel free to skip to any part that you'd like. Let's get into it. Now, data science interview tips can only help you if you already have the basics covered. If you don't know things like SQL, data analytics, and data visualization, then I recommend taking this course offered by Course Careers. I started out in this field with a $30,000 computer science degree. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would skip the degree and learn everything online instead. Now, I know that there are so many platforms offering data science and data analytics courses, but here's what I really like about Course Careers. 1, they don't just teach you a bunch of skills through an online course and then let you go after that. They also offer unlimited mentorship from people who actually have worked in the industry. Now, you tell me what sounds better: a $30,000 college degree taught by professors with no industry experience versus an online course at the fraction of the price with unlimited coaching from people who have the jobs that you want. I would choose the latter any day. 2, Course Careers has a network of employers who are willing to interview and hire top graduates from their program. So if all of this sounds great to you, then I recommend signing up for Course Careers using the link in my description. If you're not quite ready to pay for the full course just yet, Course Careers also has a free course that will teach you how to break into the field of data analytics. This is completely free, and you can sign up for it as well using the link in my description if you're not ready to pay for the complete course just yet. Okay, let's get back to the video and help you land that data science job. The first interview round is the technical interview. This is usually where you'll be given some kind of timed online test, or it could even be a paired programming problem that you need to solve with the interviewer. Sounds complicated? Let's break this down. Okay, here's what you need to know for the technical round of your data science interview. 1. Programming. 90% of the time, you will be given a timed coding test that looks like this one. I've taken this from a platform called HackerRank. If you don't know what HackerRank is, watch my video titled How to Learn a Code in 2024. But to summarize, there are two platforms, HackerRank and LeetCode, that offer programming practice questions. Most employers will give you coding tests that are very, very similar to the ones on these sites. So, here are the steps to ace the coding round of the technical interview. Step 1, make a checklist of all of the concepts that you need to know. This can either be in Python or R. I will always recommend learning Python. To make life easier for you, I have created a free Python checklist listing all of the concepts that you need to know from beginner to intermediate to advanced. So just go to the link in my description, download the checklist, and learn all of these topics one by one. To learn the concepts listed on this checklist, I recommend taking Free Code Camp's Python for Beginners tutorial. You can find this on YouTube. Step 2, sign up to HackerRank and LeetCode. After you've learned all of the concepts listed on the checklist, you need to be able to use these concepts to solve interview questions. And that's exactly what HackerRank and LeetCode will help you to do. So I want you to do at least 50 questions on these sites. Start with the easy questions and then progress to the more intermediate and difficult level questions. Again, if you'd like a more detailed guide on how to learn programming, I have an entire video titled How to Learn a Code in 2024, so you can check that out in the link in my description. You can also find it on my channel. The second thing you need to learn is SQL. Now, just like with programming, there are 2 steps you need to take to ace the SQL portion of your interview. Step 1, learn all of the concepts in this checklist that I have made for you. This is the same checklist that I use to ace my own SQL interview. To learn the topics on this checklist, I suggest taking this YouTube video by Luke Barus. This is a 4-hour long course that will teach you everything that you need to know about SQL for data science. Step 2 is to do a bunch of SQL practice. Now, most data science interviews will give you a problem that looks like this, and they're going to expect you to solve this problem with an SQL query. This will usually be a timed technical test. So, how do you get good enough to solve a problem like this in a small amount of time? An online course will not suffice. Simply learning these concepts will not suffice. Instead, you've got to do a bunch of practice. I recommend going on HackerRank and LeetCode, solve at least 50 SQL problems on these platforms. Because again, just like with programming, the interview questions for SQL are going to be very, very similar to the ones that you'll find on these platforms. Now, if any of this sounds confusing, or if you want a more detailed step-by-step guide on learning SQL for data science, then I recommend watching my video titled How to Learn SQL for Data Science. You can find this in the link in my description. You can also find it in my channel. The third thing that you need to know is obviously machine learning. Interviewers will test you on your knowledge of core machine learning concepts. They'll either ask you some of these questions during the face-to-face interview, or they might ask you some of these questions during the technical interview in the form of a multiple choice question or an open-ended question. Here are some basic concepts that you'll be expected to know to pass the machine learning section of your data science interview. You can take a screenshot of this. I also have a more detailed machine learning checklist. This includes all of the machine learning concepts you'll need to learn before going for that data science interview. Again, it's completely free and you can find the checklist in the link in my description. Some concepts you'll need to know include the difference between regression and classification, supervised versus unsupervised machine learning, data pre-processing, things like treating outliers, missing values, exploratory data analysis, hyperparameter tuning, time series analysis, the list goes on. You might also be asked model-specific questions like, what are the assumptions behind linear regression? So I recommend looking into the most popular machine learning models, the workings behind them, how to use them, and when to use them. I've also been asked use case type questions. In this case, the interviewer will just pull up a data set and ask you something like, looking at this data set, what are the steps that you would take to predict sales for the next 3 years? In this case, I recommend taking out a pen and a piece of paper and working through your thought process. A sample answer would be, first I perform data pre-processing, and then I perform exploratory data analysis, and then I build a linear regression model or an ARIMA model. Interviewers will also ask you follow-up questions based on your previous answers. So for example, if you said, I would build an ARIMA model to predict sales for the next 3 months, the interviewer might ask you something like, why ARIMA? Why not this other model? Or if you were to use ARIMA, how would you handle seasonality in the data set? Or what are the assumptions of the ARIMA model? So whatever model it is that you choose to talk about, make sure that you really understand how the model works and that you're able to explain it. Also, remember to learn the different model evaluation techniques. You have different techniques for regression versus classification. I have listed some of these techniques on the screen. I've also included them in my machine learning checklist. You will also be asked use case type questions based on these model evaluation techniques. For example, an interviewer might show you an ROC-AUC curve, and he might say, based on this curve, what is the optimal threshold value that you should choose for the model? Or they might ask you a question like, based on this scenario, would you choose to optimize for precision or recall? Now, if all of this sounds confusing to you, don't worry. I started out not knowing any of this. There are just so many concepts that you need to know when it comes to learning machine learning, and it is so easy to get lost. So to make life easier for you than it was for me, I have created this machine learning checklist that you can refer to. Now, if you cover all of the concepts that I have mentioned in this checklist, you're gonna be 90% there to acing the ML portion of your interview. Because this checklist was created based on my experience having interviewed with multiple companies, as well as having spoken to other data scientists and hiring managers. All you need to do is click on the link in my description to access this checklist. I've ordered this checklist from beginner to advanced, so start at the top and make your way down. This is the checklist that I have personally been using recently for my own interviews. It is how I managed to pass 3 rounds of interviews in 3 different companies in a single month, and hopefully it helps you too. Finally, how do you learn the machine learning concepts that I've listed in this checklist? Now, there are 2 resources that I really like for machine learning. The first is Krish Naik's YouTube channel, and the second is StatQuest's YouTube channel. So I recommend learning these concepts from these 2 YouTube channels. Now, if there is a concept on the checklist that isn't being taught on either of these channels, then I recommend just using Google and GenAI, because you'll find hundreds, if not thousands of tutorials on each concept mentioned in the checklist. So just find a resource, learn about it. If you ever get stuck, just go to ChatGPT and get it to explain the concept to you in more detail. The 4th thing that you need to learn is statistics. Now, statistics is something that I personally struggled with when I came into data science, and that's because I came from a computer science background, so my knowledge of statistics was non-existent. And most people who come into data science are really intimidated by the amount of math and statistics that's required. But it's not really that hard. To ace data science interviews, you need to learn something called applied statistics. Now, this doesn't mean complex calculations, formulas, or number crunching. This simply means how can you use statistical techniques to solve real-world problems. For example, let's say your company runs an ad, and as a result of this ad, there's an improvement in sales. How do you know that this increase in sales is statistically significant? In other words, how do you know that this improvement in sales didn't just happen by chance and that the ad really was effective? This is where you need to understand things like hypothesis testing, p-values, the different types of statistical tests. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to know any complex calculations, you don't need to write anything down by hand, you don't need to know any complex math. You just need to be able to use Python or R libraries to run some of these statistical tests and interpret the results. You also need to know some descriptive statistics, Things like how would you analyze the distribution of a variable and how would you look at the mean, median, and mode. Okay, so here are some statistics questions that you might be asked during your data science interview. Take a screenshot of some of these questions if you need, and I recommend finding the answers yourself. Okay, so how do you start learning statistics for data science from scratch? There are two learning resources that I recommend starting out with. The first is StatQuest on YouTube, and the second is called Statistical Learning. You can find it on edX, it's by Stanford University. You can audit the entire course for free. But you do need to know concepts that go beyond the scope of what's being taught in these learning resources. You need to be able to apply statistics to real data sets. For example, take this data set. You've got to be able to use Python to run a t-test on this dataset to identify if the increase in sales is statistically significant. Unfortunately, I've noticed a huge gap in the statistics that's being taught in online courses versus what you need to know for industry. So the statistics that's being taught in online courses, it's either really simple, super basic, non-technical, barely scratches the surface of what you need to know, or it is really advanced and assumes a strong background in math and statistics. In my case, I just wanted something in the middle. I didn't want to go too deep. I didn't want to go into the math and the theory. I just wanted to learn how to use statistics to solve data problems. If you're anything like me, then I suggest using generative AI and Google. That's all, just these two resources. And here's how you do it. So just type the questions that I had on screen earlier into Google or into a GenAI model like ChatGPT. And then write down the answers on a piece of paper. You will have follow-up questions. You will be confused at a certain point. Just ask ChatGPT those follow-up questions. Keep the conversation going. That's how you learn. If you'd like, I can create a more detailed video on how to learn data science with ChatGPT. This will show you how you can use GenAI to learn things like programming, statistics, machine learning, and data analysis. Okay, so let's say you've done the following. You've learned Python and SQL, you've done the HackerRank and the LeetCode, you've learned all of the machine learning and statistics concepts on my checklist. You're now completely prepared for the technical interview, which is the most difficult section of the interview. We can now move on to the next round. The second interview round is a take-home assessment. This is usually a case study that will take you about 3 to 4 days to 1 week to complete. Now, not all companies have this interview round, but most big tech companies and reputable firms will give you a take-home assessment. So here's what companies are actually looking for in this interview round. Your ability to develop data science solutions using real-world data. Now, during your technical interview, you will be tested on your programming skills, how good you are at SQL, and all of the machine learning and data science concepts that you know. But how good are you at taking all of these concepts and applying them to a real business problem? How good are you at solving actual business problems? How good are you at communicating this insight to a stakeholder or a non-technical person? That is exactly what the case study portion of your interview is going to test for. So, here's what I want you to do. To prepare for this round, you need to solve your own end-to-end data science project. So go to ChatGPT or any other GenAI model and type the following prompt into it, asking for a business use case and a data set. Once you get the business problem and data set, I want you to use any technique to solve the business problem. So you can use Python, R, SQL to analyze the data and build a machine learning model. It really doesn't matter what tools you use. Once you get an end result, I want you to create a presentation or a dashboard to communicate all of your findings. And then upload your presentation to ChatGPT. Ask it to rate your work out of 10 and iteratively improve based on the feedback that ChatGPT gives you. That's how you learn. I also suggest sharing your work on LinkedIn and on Medium. So write a Medium article or a LinkedIn post about your work. This way, other people in your network can see what you're capable of. And you never know, a potential employer might always come across your work and they might even hire you because of it. I know so many people who have received job offers solely because of their LinkedIn posts and their Medium articles. So let's say you've passed the first 2 interview rounds. You aced the technical interview and everyone loved your presentation for the business use case. You're not out of the woods just yet. You still have a final interview round left, and that is the behavioral or the culture fit interview. So many candidates take this interview round for granted. They don't prepare for it because they feel like the hardest part is over. And that's the biggest mistake that you can make. I've seen so many promising candidates get rejected just because they weren't a good culture fit or just because of poor soft skills. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is fair. I don't think it's great that you might be an amazing data scientist who gets rejected just because the hiring team doesn't like your personality. But it happens, and the behavioral interview is a qualifying factor. It is what separates you from 2 to 3 other final candidates. This interview round is a bit different. It can't really be quantified like the other interview rounds. It is difficult to put a number on someone's soft skills or on their culture fit. But what you want to do is just leave a good impression with the employer. So even before you apply for the company, research the company's goals, their direction, and their overall values, and see if it aligns with where you want to be in the future. For example, if you're applying to a fast-paced tech company that uses cutting-edge technology, assess if that's the right fit for you. Are you the kind of person who thrives in fast-paced environments? Do you want to climb the career ladder quickly? Are you always staying on top of emerging trends and technologies? If yes, then great, that is the right place for you. Make sure to get this message across during your interviews, because chances are the hiring manager and the other team members have similar values and similar ambitions to the ones that you have. In simple terms, play to your strengths and make sure that these strengths are conveyed to the employer. While this might sound too simplistic, it is a far better approach than simply applying to hundreds of random companies across LinkedIn and Indeed and wondering why you're getting nowhere with the job search. Here are some questions that you're likely to get during your data science behavioral interview. You can take a screenshot of these questions and evaluate how you're going to respond to them. Practice your answers to these questions. Now, I really don't recommend using ChatGPT or AI-generated answers. Please don't go on Google and find some generic Google response to these questions that is going to be so obvious. Instead, really dig deep, look into your values and your past experience, and try to relate that to the questions that you see on screen. As usual, I am giving you homework. These are things that I want you to do right after watching this video so that you go out there, ace that interview, and get that data science job instead of just thinking about it and talking about it. Okay, so here's your homework. First, I want you to download my data science interview checklist. You can find this in the link in my description. I've broken this checklist down into 4 areas: Python, SQL, machine learning, and statistics. Now, you don't need to start learning or taking a course or doing anything. I just want you to look at this checklist and check the concepts that you already know. This is a self-evaluation. You need to look at the checklist and understand what concepts you know and what concepts you don't know. This will help you understand where you currently stand in your data science learning journey. Your second homework task is to rank yourself. Now, I want you to take out a pen and a piece of paper and rank yourself out of 10 in the following areas: Python, SQL, machine learning, and statistics. You can even get GenAI to rank you. So just go to ChatGPT, ask it to give you some sample questions in each area, and based on your answers, get it to rank you out of 10. When I first started out, I was like an 8 in Python, a 7 in SQL, a 6 in machine learning, and a 4 in statistics. This made me aware of my strengths and weaknesses, and I ended up spending like 4 to 5 hours each week learning ML and statistics. If you're a complete beginner, then you might be like a 1 in each of these areas, and that's okay. You can start from the beginning of this checklist by taking a Python course, and then you can progress to learning SQL, machine learning, and statistics. Your third homework task is to build a data science roadmap. Now that you know what you need to learn and where you currently stand, I want you to build a roadmap from where you are now to where you want to get to. For example, if you're a complete beginner to data science, here's what your roadmap would look like. You take 2 weeks to learn Python with an online course, another month to practice Python, 2 weeks to learn SQL, 1 month to practice SQL. And then you take another 1.5 months for machine learning and 1.5 months for statistics. Altogether, this comes up to about 6 months. This is just an example. You can take a screenshot of this roadmap and follow it if you'd like. Of course, this will be different for you based on where you currently stand and how much time you're spending each day. You can even have GenAI build out this roadmap for you. Now, notice that I haven't asked you to do any real work at all. You're not taking an online course, you're not actually learning anything. I'm just asking you to plan. Evaluate where you currently stand, what you know, what the gaps in your knowledge are, and then build out a plan to fill these gaps. The reason I'm asking you to do this is because when you have such a big long-term goal, like learn data science to ace an interview, that just sounds so impossible. It's a huge task and it's intimidating. I felt stuck for months because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's why I'm asking you to first break it down, go back to the basics, assess what you don't know, and then come up with a plan to fill the gaps in your knowledge. Create some kind of start point and end point, build a time frame, add some milestones, and then start learning. The final homework task is to share your data science roadmap. Whether this is a 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or 1 year plan, just share it publicly on LinkedIn or on Twitter. If you don't want to, you can just send it to a friend or an accountability partner. I also recommend sharing new things every week. For example, if you learn a new concept in Python or machine learning, just share it with your network on LinkedIn. This way, other people are going to know about what you're learning, they're going to know about your plans, and you're sharing your work publicly as you're learning new things. And who knows, someone in your network might see your work, they might learn about your plans, and they might share your work with a potential employer. Or the LinkedIn or Medium algorithm could bring in like thousands of views and you might end up getting hired as a result. That's all for this video. I hope that it helped in some way in your data science journey. I hope that you get the data science job. Good luck with the interview process and thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel and I will see you in the next one. Bye!